Sylvia Likens was a young girl who had her whole life ahead of her, or so it seemed. But in 1947, when she was just 14 years old, she met a man named John Franklin Roberts. And from the moment he laid eyes on her, he knew that he wanted her for himself. But he wasn't the only one. Her own father even agreed to let him marry his daughter, as long as he could produce a marriage license. But before they could get married, Sylvia's father went to prison for an unrelated crime. So Roberts decided to wait until Sylvia turned 16 so he could marry her without her father as permission. But he couldn't wait any longer. He broke into the house where Sylvia and her family were staying and kidnapped her. He then took her to a secluded cabin where he kept her for 3 weeks, repeatedly raping her and beating her with an axe handle. When he was done with her, he left her there to die. But somehow she managed to escape and make it home. However, no one believed her story, and they all thought that she was making it up. Even her own mother told her to stop being so dramatic. So Sylvia took matters into her own hands and ran away from home. She lived on the streets for a while, stealing food and money to survive. But eventually she was taken in by a kind woman named Gertrude Baniszewski, who gave her a place to stay and a job working as a maid. Sylvia was finally able to have a taste of the normal life that she had been denied for so long. She made friends, found a boyfriend, and even started going to high school. But her nightmare was far from over because it turned out that Gertrude was actually a serial killer, and she had taken in many other young girls under the guise of helping them only to torture and murder them. Sylvia was next on her list. The killer had already planned out her murder and even bought a new set of false teeth to replace the ones that she would lose when she killed Sylvia. On March 23, 1949, Gertrude lured Sylvia into her basement and beat her to death with a lead pipe. She then cut up her body and threw the pieces into a nearby river. The police were able to recover the body parts and identify them as Sylvia's, but they had no leads on who could have done such a thing. The investigation went nowhere, and the case went cold. But a few months later, Gertrude was arrested for the murder of another woman, and she confessed to killing Sylvia as well as 3 other women. She was sentenced to death by electric chair, and she spent her last years in prison planning out her escape. On January 9, 1953, she was executed. And as the electric chair was being prepared, she asked if she could make a statement. She said, "I'd like to tell the world I'm innocent." But when the chair was turned on, she screamed, "Oh God, what have I done?" As you can imagine, this case is absolutely horrific, and it's hard to believe that something like this could actually happen. But unfortunately, these types of things do happen, and it is important to be aware of the signs so that you can protect yourself and others. Sylvia was only 14 years old when she was first taken by John Roberts, and he was more than twice her age. It's hard to believe that someone could be so evil, but it does happen. Sometimes people who commit these types of crimes are able to hide their true nature until it is too late. That's why it's important to be aware of the signs and to trust your gut instincts. If something doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't. I really hope that you never have to experience anything like what Sylvia went through, but I think it is important to be aware of these cases so that we can learn from them and make sure that something like this never happens again. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.